Hopefully you've worked out there's a bit of a theme coming here. Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here in Bangkok for my first UFI Congress. And I'm here for two reasons. Firstly, because Kai asked me. And secondly, and although she doesn't believe me, it's because Mary Larkin is the incoming president of UFI as of tomorrow. I think it's fantastic for our industry that Mary is coming into this leadership position. So I think we should all give her a big round of applause for Mary Larkin. So the theme that we're talking about is trust. And I'm very pleased that I've got Ewan McGregor to play me. A good Scottish actor. So, trust. Well, the fact that Kai asked me to come and speak and he hasn't a clue what I'm going to say is actually really showing the trust in me. So thank you, Kai. So I'm going to talk about private equity and my journey and my company's journey in the last 12 months. And going back 12 months ago, my perception of private equity was Darth Vader. And I'm sure that's a lot of people's view of private equity. So I've gone from 21 years running a public company to the dark side, and I'm now owned by private equity. And I did feel like I was the last person out there, the last Jedi. But before I get into the journey over the last 12 months, I just thought it'd be useful just to review the moves in the industry over the last 40 or so years. Going back 40 or so years ago, the structure of the industry was very much family businesses, entrepreneurs, associations, and government-owned or quasi-government-owned organizers. Then, in the mid-'80s, you had the rise of the public companies, really led by Neville Book building Blenheim, Bob Craycoff and Mike Rushbridge building Reed, and then United Newspapers, which became UBM, coming into the industry. So that was the move of the PLCs. Then you had the first move of private equity in the US. You had Hellman and Friedman buying Advanstar, then Verona Schuler coming and buying a number of different assets. Time moved on, and then we had really the second wave of private equity, which is really where we are now. We've seen the largest private equity business in the world, Blackstone, come heavily into our industry, one of the biggest investors in our industry. They bought Clarion, and we'll hear from Simon a little later. And it's taken Clarion now to be the third biggest organizer in the world. Not only has it invested in organizers, it's also invested in the contract side. So it's invested in PSAV in the US, it's invested in the venue side with the International Market Center and the NEC in Birmingham. So a lot of investment going in from private equity. We've had Charterhouse, who my new owner, owned Comexposium. Then you've had, to a smaller degree, closer still in the UK, that's gone through a number of different iterations. And then finally, on the PLC side, we've seen the biggest transaction that's ever happened in our industry with the merger of UBM with Informa. So a lot of change. And if one looks at the macro situation of the public and private, there's been some very interesting trends over the last 10 years. What we've seen in terms of returns is that private equity has returned twice the amount of money that the public markets have done. And as a result, it's not really a surprise. If we look at the US, the number of public companies has gone from 5,000 to just over 4,000. So quite a big reduction in public companies in the US. While at the same time, the number of private equity companies has gone from 4,000 to over 8,000. So it's doubled in that period of time, which is quite amazing. And the other interesting statistic that happened for the first time last year was the amount of public companies coming off the market, going private, has exceeded the number of companies IPOing and going on the market. So the trend of capital flows is very clear. It's a move away from the public markets to the private markets. So why is that happening, and is it going to continue? I think the answer to that is yes. Firstly, there is a lot of debt out there. Debt is very cheap. There is no real difference in the cost of 7-year debt to 10-year debt to 20-year debt to 30-year debt. So debt is cheap, and therefore people can continue to make acquisitions. The other thing that will continue to fuel it is that private equity has over $2.5 trillion of cash available to invest today. And they are desperate to invest into the market. So the trends that we've seen over the last few years, I think, are only going to accelerate. So if we look at the future, and my view of the future is that if you look at the smaller organizers, we will continue to see the trend of entrepreneurs continuing to build up their businesses. The mid-market is where I think private equity is going to be very active. They're going to continue to invest in the mid-market and build up organizers where they can. And at the larger scale side, you'll continue to see the big public companies continuing to add to the portfolios. But I think you'll see a change in the large private equity companies. What you're beginning to see is big investors in private equity saying, actually, we don't want to be investing in vehicles where they're constantly selling every 4 or 5 years and churning over. We have got long-term liabilities, if they're a big pension fund or the sovereign wealth funds. We want to invest for the long term. So I think the future will be private equity will actually move to be long-term capital, investing for long periods of time and not the 4 or 5 years that we've seen. That will still be the case in the mid-market, but in the big market, we're beginning to see that change. So just a little bit on my journey over the last 12 months. Charterhouse had a very good experience with Renault and Simon at Comexposium, and they announced the sale of Comexposium last December. And then at the end of January this year, Charterhouse approached us and said, we've had such a great experience with Comexposium, we'd like to stay in the industry, and we would like to buy you. And we said, well, that's very interesting, but actually, no. They've been very persistent. They came back in February, made another offer, and we said, well, that's actually not very interesting either. They came back in March, so there was a bit of a theme here that we're going to continue to come back. And eventually, at the end of April, we had a meeting which actually lasted for 20 minutes, where they made an offer which actually we accepted, and we gave them 4 weeks to make the acquisition, which they did, and we announced it on the 24th of May, and it completed in the middle of August. So I've actually now gone to the dark side, or what I thought was the dark side, but in reality, it's now Luke Skywalker. It's really, really been positive, but I would say if Luke Skywalker was in the exhibition industry, he probably actually wouldn't look like this. He would probably look more like this. I think you look quite good with that hair, Simon. So in terms of private equity, what I would say is that actually there are opportunities for entrepreneurs to work with private equity. They do provide liquidity. They do provide growth capital. And I think that they do provide structures allowing companies to get bigger, to transition to long-term capital. So I think my view has definitely changed over the last 12 months in terms of actually the positive things that private equity can do. A lot of the things that I thought and was a little frightened of at private equity wasn't the case. Of course, there are a lot of 24-year-olds running around with spreadsheets, but I expected that. But actually, they have been a force for good. And I'd just like to finish off by saying that if you've come to Bangkok to network with friends, whether new or old, whether you've come actually to find new partners, to look to buy businesses, or even to sell businesses, all I can say, ooh, I didn't get it to work. Ooh. I like that slide. Hey, may the force be with you.
I'm Trixie, I'm Singaporean. So in case anyone is wondering, married French husband, so it's LohMirmand. Not too long ago was a Webster. So talking about trust in men, I'm not so sure for now. Maybe today it gets better. But of course, before that, there are many unregistered ones as well. So just cross the channel. Today we're going to talk about trust. I'm going to try and speak as slow as I can. I think Singaporeans have a tendency to speak quite fast. So I've been in Dubai for 15 years now. I think when I went to Dubai, I was 10 years in the industry. Haven't been in Reed, so always a great place to train people. I think we have a lot of Reed colleagues here, probably, hopefully. And I was working in the London office and Singapore as well. So talking about trust, I think it takes many years to build, seconds to destroy it, and forever to repair it. I think a woman would tell you as well. You catch your husband for 2 seconds, it's over. 1 second. Nanoseconds now. I think it's a cumulative of many actions over time. It's consistency, it's the frequency of good decisions. I'm going to just show you the next one on His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, and I'll explain a little bit. He was in the office one morning, 7:30, of some of the senior government officials in Dubai. Next day, I think we have colleagues from UAE, yeah, from Abu Dhabi. I think I have quite a few colleagues. Do I see some hands here? Great, good to see you guys. We understand how the leadership works here. The next day, 9 senior government officials were terminated. They were not at work when they're supposed to be. He was there by himself to check on everyone. Dubai has probably, and UAE probably has more strategies than anywhere else in the world. AI, blockchain, industrial plan, UAE plan, paperless strategy. I think a lot of countries have that, a lot of cities, but I think it's probably the most publicized in the world. When you want a government and the industry to move at 10x the space, you need to move at the pace that he wants, and you know, in order to move and transform the economy. If you work under such a leadership, 9 officials were sacked because they were not there. I hope when I get back, I still have my job. I was not there this morning. So. Trust is the one believer who bets on you. I think I've been very fortunate. When my boss came into the job, he was only in his 20s. Yeah, he was appointed by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed. And 1 year on, I had the privilege of being put into that position. But bear in mind, during that time, 15 years ago, I was just 30. As a woman, Asian. I have only been to Dubai 1 time in my life. I had only 10 years on my CV. Yeah, before that, I was leading on the air show, Asian Aerospace by Reed during that time. So I do have a bit of experience dealing with lots of male or just generally senior executives with big ego as well, we know. Not new, but I'm not so sure many of us in this room is going to take a bet on someone with a profile, the age, the gender, the experience. They did. And it's the same reason that His Highness has put in, you know, my Director General who was in his 20s. There is something that they're looking for. The trust is easily given, but to earn it and build it, to stay in it, is a different story. So I was privileged. For whatever reason, they decided to hire me. I was there. But I'm always very grateful that someone out there believes in me. And because that one person believes in me, I'm going to make it work for everything that's worth. So just going through, when Kai and the team were saying, Trixie, it would be great for you to just share as a custodian of some of the most precious brands of Dubai, UAE, and also dealing with a lot of the key companies, government, private. What does it take? And also being a female executive out there. And especially during that time, I was 30 years old and not really understanding. The environment is quite different. It's, of course, quite conservative compared to everywhere else you've been. But what it means for you guys today is it's not just about me or anything. It's about you building the trust if you want to operate in that part of the world. I think this is a key message for you to take away. But despite that, it's very progressive. In a funny way, it's conservative, but it's progressive. So as I went through some of the archives just to look at some photos to share with you what kind of environment it is, I thought the press conference would show it. So this, you see the dressing and the hair was quite a while ago. You know, have UAE colleagues and clients out there. Next one, same. I'm always at the end, left or right, hair up or down. Again, more of them, 6, 7 men there. As we move on, more men, different egos, different, look down, don't have eye contact. Move on again, more men, 20th anniversary of Gulf Food. I don't know how many more men can we squeeze in there. I'm still there, still on the job. Another one on GITEX. This time round, another one. I think there's a lot of skeptics out there for anyone. I think it's men or women. But very importantly, to challenge the skeptics is about building trust, it's about earning the trust, it's about consistent behavior, positive outcome. We're not measured by hard work. Everybody works hard. I think it's very much the outcomes, the impactful outcomes that you're going to generate for the company and the larger economy and for the leadership. And I think when you talk about skeptics, there are lots of people. And the best way to defy that, is with actions, with outcomes. You're measured by that, nothing else. Nothing else. I started in 2005. I got in. Me and my boss, 20+ euro and a 30 euro, say, let's go. We're going to take Gulf Food, the food show that we have to go annual. Everybody tells us it's not going to happen. National pavilions tell us that they're going to pull out. My staff had a walkout. I have people resigning 1 month before and say, you want us to do it? You've got to pay me double. I said, go, get out. We launched the event. We annualize it. Today, Gulf Food is the largest single annual food event in the world. Revenues doubled. We have an amazing team. And that was it. Because the management, the board believed in that. Of course, there are skeptics who said no, but we defy it. And we always constantly have the support of my boss and also the boss of the board. Actions, outcome. So this is Gulf Food today, annually. Trust is to be misunderstood. I think this is hard because whatever decisions you make, it's going to take a few years before someone sees the results, the real results and the impact. And during that time, it's very hard to be vindicated. And you need to be staying around long enough for it to feel the impact. But again, I emphasize, I always have the support of the leadership, of my management, and the board. So again, just very quickly as I move into the job, a couple of years on, CES decides to come into the market. We know CES, formidable, largest tech show in the world. We have a tech show, GITEX. It was strong. And then during that time with CeBIT, with Comdex. I think Comdex was just defunct by that time. And they have announced, Gary Shapiro said he's going to come. And you can see from the slide, he would like to see the two shows compete with each other for size, scope, and attendance. And he also said, and that was 2008, he said, I would like Dubai show, the CES Dubai, to be like Las Vegas show in 10 to 15 years. 10 years means now. No problem? Let's have a show. We make the decision to reformat the show. Hard for people to understand. I have lots of colleagues, a lot of people in the industry coming to tell us it's not going to work. We don't really understand the industry. But I think we know what we're doing. We changed the format, we turned things around. We lost Microsoft, we lost Sony and whatsoever. 2 years, they were back with us. And since then, they have never left us. CES, out of the market in 2 years. Results. It's the brands trusting us, testing you, and you persevering. Trust is to say no. You need to learn to say no in order for people to know what you're trying to do at the end of the day. I can't remember which one, I think 4 years ago, Trade Center has just launched 3 new halls, 15,000 square meters. And when we launch something, it needs to sell out again. This is what the leadership says. And again, I want to be very clear, although we are government-linked, we are commercial. We don't get any funding from anybody else. If we get government entities supporting in the show, they pay. We don't get handouts, contrary to what everybody thinks. So I have Jitex, for example, I have GovFood. So coming to Jitex, suddenly I've given it 15,000. In a year, it must sell out, it must be profitable. Nobody's going to subsidize. So had a presentation, we came out with a strategy, went to my boss and the board. I said, I want to launch a startup show. And during the time in Dubai and in the region, what is a startup? There's no startup 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there's nothing. There's no ecosystem, there's no accelerators, incubators, you don't hear of them. We have no relationship with any of these sectors. I said, no, I know that's the way to go, let's try it. My boss finally said, okay, do it, because at the end of the day, you're accountable. That's the kind of trust. We challenged, and he said, go for it. We did. Knowing that we don't have the staff to do it, we don't have the relationship, we don't have a network. Jitex to launch largest startup event in Middle East, and understand the pressure when we do it. When you do something, it cannot be mediocre. You have to hit all the thresholds of being the largest, being the biggest, being the deepest, being the roundest. Today, we have probably the world's 3rd largest startup show in the world, 4 years on. 4 years on. We just completed this show 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So this is the last photograph from there. Yes, learn to say no, and you live to tell the tale. And people believed you after that. But it needs to continue to break through, because consistent good behavior is okay for a while. But this is Dubai. Nobody condones mediocre, average, okay, it was good. You need to go for great. And you want to go to great, you need to break through. We launched Gulf Food Manufacturing in 2014. It was the biggest launch the World Trade Center has seen. The first show was 50,000 square meters. I think if you take a show of 4,000 square meters, it's a lot. And I have to credit my team. Incredible, in 1 year, it was the single largest launch by any organizer in the region. Trust is to rise above. Again, being average, being great, you still need to get greater. Over the last 2 years, we launched blockchain. We have the Dubai Blockchain Future Summit, and I think some colleagues here, Joe, Enrico, Wilbert, they were all involved in helping us with the show launch. We launched AI Everything. We had to come up with the concept and go to the government officers to pitch for it, like anybody else. And especially from a quasi-government agency, going to a minister to pitch for it. If he decides to endorse your event, it's do or die, it's make or break. If you embarrass the leadership, if you embarrass the mission, the strategy, I don't think I'll be standing here. That is the kind of pressure, that is the kind of trust they will give you, and you have to reciprocate with outcomes, results that is tangible, palpable, felt by the economy. Because you can't lie. This is senior leadership, this is the audience, this is the community. AI Everything, in the first year, is now probably the top 2 largest AI show in the world in 1 year. We launched it in a record time of 5 months. For the leadership to believe that we can launch something in 5 months and hit all the KPIs, you know, I have to credit them for believing in the team. I think what is more interesting for us is it has now become the official UAE government AI event. And I think Enrico and the team can always attest to it. So I can't lie, he's sitting in the audience, he knows my numbers. All these new shows that we launched in the last 2 years, I think the benchmark is minus 17% for exhibitors, NPS. We are tracking at plus 26, plus 27%. It is not just a show. It's a community, it's an experience. It's something that's going to last. It serves the purpose of all the stakeholders. Trust is to live to tell the tale today and sticking around for them to know that you're going to bear the consequences. And this is what the leadership wants. And I think in Dubai, UAE, or the region, largely, you probably hear people kind of, oh, you were there on the job and you disappeared. Oh, we call the guy, he's no longer there. I think you read it in the news. I think this is that transit nature of, I'll give you the job, I trust you, are you going to deliver? If you deliver, great. If you don't, out you go. You've seen His Highness leading by example. So these are the kind of leadership that has driven the economy to move very fast, and also the evolution of shows in the region as well. So today, with the onset of CES, and of course, it's quite unfortunate, CeBIT kind of has come up with a new strategy to move on. It's hard. In the tech space, it's hard. People are very, very discerning, very critical. These are the Googles, Facebooks, Microsoft of the world. It's difficult to keep up with technology. You used to have hardware that take up so much space, and then and then now you go into the cloud. From 5,000 square meters, they tell you, I'm going to take 500 square meters. I've got nothing to show. It's in the cloud. But today, next year, we're going to go into our 40th anniversary. GITEX is now probably one of the top 3 biggest in the world. International event where visitors coming from 152 countries. Very importantly, as Dubai World Trade Center, we do not just measure on visitor numbers. There must be a great impact on the economy. So you imagine the kind of pressure and stress we go through. It's not just launching a show. It must hit a lot of KPIs that is for the larger and wider good of the industry and the economy. GITEX itself in that 5 days contributed to 440 million to the economy. And the retain impact in the country is 220 million. Out of every $1 that's being spent, the international visitors, which is what we focus on, is spending 9 times on Dubai. So you can imagine the impact of events. Why we obsess over it? Because there's a much wider, significant outcome than just a show in 22 halls. I think trust cannot be more empowering than when the leadership is humanized. I'm a nobody in the whole scheme of things. Nothing. You look at all the leadership there. I think those of you who have operated in the UAE have seen, you're nowhere to be found, especially as an expat. His Highness, on a few occasions, have gone off his way. And that's, to me, most humbling. He went off his way to come forward, to extend his wishes and his gratitude. And this is the moment when he asked my boss, I know she has been here for very long. How long has Trixie been here? They know, they're watching, they appreciate, and they're giving you the role of being the custodian of some of the most precious, valuable assets that they have. But again, I emphasize, if you don't keep up, probably this is not going to happen again. So it's a constant renewal and rejuvenation exercise for everyone. Trust is to make everyone look like rock stars, from your board of directors to your boss and to your colleagues. When you have great shows, and also to the clients, most importantly, who's paying our salaries. Everybody wants to have good shows on their CVs. This is just some of the people who are involved in the GITEX, from people in the car parking, marshalling, to F&B. So yeah, so this is where we are about trust. I think it cannot be said in any meetings, but it's really through, a journey of decisions that you make, impact that's being felt, and the continuous rising above. So being here, surviving to tell the tale, for me is a great privilege and very humbling. Thank you very much.
Gonna do some dancing, come on! No, we're not. No, I can't dance, as you can see. We can sing. Good morning. I think it's now just about good afternoon, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here. As you can see, I'm a blue badge holder, which means something different in the UK. But here it means I'm a virgin, which is lovely. So, so Clarion Events, I'm very proud to be the chairman of Clarion Events. I would like to thank the previous speakers. Trixie, that was lovely to hear the in and outers of Dubai. And Doug's speech reminded me of my mother. My mother is a very staunch Catholic. And she said to me, the best Catholics are the converts. and I'd love to welcome Doug into the converted world of private equity. So well done, Doug, for saying that. I have to say I'm fed up of hearing him knock private equity for years and years. I was just luxuriating in the wonderful things that he was saying about private equity. But I put this first slide up, is a motley bunch of people cheering. This was when last year Clarion is an award that we won. We did this. And we selected a whole load of people from the business, both senior down to junior, to actually try and work out what the values of the business was. And the one little point I wanted to make, and we came up with these 4 values, it was a great process, but perhaps the best thing that epitomized this whole thing was when we actually looked at trust, we thought, how can we actually show this to the business? How can we use this in the business? So we came up with an idea. It was an idea that was actually nicked from another business, as all good ideas are. But the idea was that we would empower any single employee within Earls Court and Olympia, that could be the gate guard, it could be the fire officer, or whatever it was, that they were allowed to spend £1,000, up to £1,000, and even more if they wanted to, but up to £1,000 without any recourse at all. That if they saw someone in trouble or whatever, they could give them the money. If they had to do something or if someone came and complained, anyone in the whole organization could actually say, listen, yes, you're right, here's your money back or whatever, without any recourse at all. No recourse at all. Well, as you can imagine, when we were debating this at the board, we debated it long and hard. And actually, we were very divided as to whether we should do this or not. And the big point of it really was the cost. How much is this going to cost us? This could be hundreds of thousands of pounds that we're giving away. Yes, it might be a good thing. But yes, we want to trust our workforce, but will they actually do this in the right way? And we really debated it, and I have to say it was a very split decision. Fortunately, sometimes there are leadership there. We had a great leader in the name of Andrew Morris who was absolutely determined to make it happen, and he said, I don't care, I know it's a split decision, we're going to do this. Well, the result of that was quite remarkable, in as much as people all of a sudden, the gate guards, as you can imagine, or the fire officer or whatever, all of a sudden said, I can spend £1,000 and there is no recourse. Absolutely. And it was very, very uplifting, and it was a very, very positive thing. And the interesting part of it is that at the end of the year, at the board meeting, we did a review of how much money had been spent on this initiative amongst all the people. And the money that was spent was £63. And it was the gate guard, funny enough, that actually a woman had lost her purse and he paid for a taxi to get home. So this whole thing cost us £63, but it actually changed the whole format of the business. Jeremy, am I more or less accurate on that? It really did energize the whole business. Anyway, there we are. So what am I going to talk about? The role that trust plays in buying and selling businesses. We've all had a go at definitions this morning of trust, and I think one of the, perhaps the most important definitions of trust is, it was actually covered a little bit this morning, is being vulnerable to someone. That is what you are doing when you are trusting someone. But I also, there's also a fine line between trust, and also I slipped up when I was typing trust, and I also came up with tryst, of course, which is trust is not to be confused with tryst, which is a secret rendezvous between lovers. Now that maybe is a bit of trust there. Maybe there's a reason why the U and the Y, there's a clue, U and Y are there for that rendezvous. But anyway, moving on from that. So trust is truth. Trust is truth as far as I'm concerned. It's integrity. It's where we are at, what we're doing. And I think the most important thing when the context of buying and selling businesses, the great thing about Clarion, the great thing about being private equity owned, is that we are spending a lot of other people's money. We heard we're owned by Blackstone. They have a very deep pockets, and they're very happy to spend that money. And the wonderful thing about buying companies is that we have sold ourselves also for 5 times over the last 18 years. So we're sellers as well. So we understand what it's like to be a seller. And I think that's what trust and truth is all about. And so therefore culture, our culture, and the culture of the businesses that we're buying, or the culture that we have as sellers, is the most important thing. So what is it within that culture? Well, I think that if you are to have integrity, and I think we all agree that integrity is the main thing about trust, is that there's got to be acceptance of change in an organization. So your organization that you're running, if you are acceptance of change, no one likes change. I hear it all the time. I want to do things differently. I want to go somewhere else. I want to see how this happens. But I don't want to change. That is where we're at. So therefore, but it's got to be an acceptance of change. And change is not just about things, and we've heard it a little bit in some of the speakers this morning. Change is also about people. You've got to understand, as a business is growing, as your businesses grow, the person that was great at that particular role may not now be good at the next role going on. It doesn't mean to say you have to move them on. You can move them into a different position, but change within the organization. We had a great session yesterday afternoon where we were talking about failures within shows, etc. One of the recurring themes there was that the team was a little stale. And therefore, I think you've got to think about that within the context of your business. We're talking all the time. I'm here with a group of Clarion guys. I work very closely with a guy called Sam Jennings. He's looking at where we're working when we're doing M&A activity. How are we actually going to do more M&A activity if we haven't got great people in the business to give businesses to, for them to own it, to them to take it on? We cannot grow if we haven't got change within the business and quality with there. We need to be entrepreneurial, of course. What does that mean? It just means developmental, to try to cut down the processes that we have. If you think of the processes within your business and then add to that all the unwritten guidelines which are in your business that you don't even know about, you've got tons and tons of rules. That might work in Singapore, apparently, but it doesn't work in business. No fear of failure. We are totally fearful of failure. And actually, we thrive on it. We like it when people fail because it makes us feel a bit better. We've got to change that attitude and, again, do things in there which is celebrating people having a go, celebrating what is happening with the business. If you're doing a new launch and it doesn't work, you've learned more from that new launch that doesn't work than a launch that works, let me tell you, and I think we've all been there. And of course, the most important thing is the people in the business. So if you get your culture right, and the culture is built on a values-based system that we have, or however you build, but if you get your culture right, you are what you are. Your character, the way that you operate, the authenticity of who you are comes through. I act as stupidly on this stage as I act privately. You will see that personified in many different ways. But it's important that what I am and what I do and how I operate is consistent. And that's where we're going. So the test, where does test come? How do we put this into operation when we're looking? Who knows? I might hopefully be buying some of the businesses in here, or hopefully there's a private equity with even larger pockets than Blackstone that would like to buy us. So where do we go? So how do we act? All these things are very, very simple. Timescales, style, logic, consistency, character, all those things are very, very important. And at the same time, that whenever you're doing a deal, that you stick to them. And if you don't stick to them, you're honest about it. It's truth again. Trust, truth, very same. So if you say you're going to do something within a month and you don't do it within a month, you've started to take that integrity out of the equation. You've got to stick to your timescales, or be honest and say, actually, we've messed up here, it's going to be a lot longer. This is the reason why. Bring people with you. Style of how you are negotiating, the logic behind your negotiation. Tell people what you're thinking. Tell people what you're doing. We are all a closed book sometimes. We know what we want. We think it would be wrong to wear our heart on our sleeve, or wrong to actually tell people how we feel. Well, boy, oh boy, if you're feeling that way, tell people. Because actually, if they feel the same way, and therefore you can have a dialogue and you can get that thing working. That's important. Consistency. If you are inconsistent, what happens? You lose the trust, etc., etc. So test on that. Forward strategy. When you are selling yourself and you're talking to someone else, be clear about what you want. Don't hedge. Don't say, I might want to stay with the business, or yes, I will stay with the business. Be very clear about what you want to achieve. As a buyer, we want you to be very clear. As a seller, I need to be very clear to the private equity about what I want. What are my motivations? What are the staff's motivations? How are we going to do things? People, again, a bit cagey. Oh, I'm not sure what I want to do. Be clear. Because actually, if there's anything out there, you're able to actually solve those problems. And if actually it's a problem too far, it's a problem too far. So be it. You're better not there. Both party agreement. All very obvious. 100% team buy-in. Character again. Maintain your own authenticity. And the final thing, post-deal, fulfillment of promises. This is where it breaks down in most acquisitions. The fulfillment of promises, how you deal with dispute, the alignment, and the character. To me, this is the bit which most people get wrong. Why do they get wrong? Is because they get there, they sell their company, or they buy a company, or however you're looking at it, and it's, phew, done that. I've got away with it. And really, this is where it starts, not where it finishes. And that's the big difference. So fulfillment of promises is hugely important to me, that if we've actually made a promise which we shouldn't have done, or we've made a promise that actually is not particularly good for us and actually better for the seller, or vice versa, stick to it. Just be brave and say, yeah, made a mistake there, you're right, you go for it. Don't worry about it. How you deal with dispute, if you've kept that character going all the way through, again, people will come to you and they'll tell you what they're thinking, as opposed to them thinking it and then getting nervous. And that's the worst scenario. So I'm being quick because I think we're way out of time. So some tips for ensuring trust in your business. I tried to condense this into 4 areas. I think that the consistency of buying or selling or whatever is a consistent point of contact pre and post deal. So in other words, you have someone involved all the way through. Someone who keeps the history, understands what's going on, understands all the unwritten communication that you've had, understands what's happening, and that then goes forward. And that you can keep yourself honest on that. So when you're doing a deal, more focus on commercial, less on legal. We all become amateur lawyers. We all become amateur accountants or whatever, and arguing, nickel and diming, as the Americans say, over every single point. The most important thing is the commerciality of what you're doing. Does it make sense? Will this business grow? Are we in the right way? Let the lawyers lawyer and let the accountants account. You concentrate on the commercial activities in that sense, and you won't go too far wrong. Ensure the character fit. And I think this is an obvious thing, but we forget. If you don't like each other, don't do it. If you don't feel as though it's a good character fit, don't do it. Why you would not have a relationship with someone that you didn't particularly like? Same rules apply. I've seen too many times people doing it for the money. Well, we know where that goes. And I think the most important one of all, a terrible graphic, sorry, the most important one of all is be prepared to lose battles to win the war. How many times have you heard that? But think about it. Don't try to win everything. If you are in a situation, give and take. We've heard all of this sort of thing. But actually, too many people want to make sure they've got every single I dotted and T crossed. Battles and wars. Win the war, sure, but lose as many battles as you need to. It does not matter. But probably the best tip of all, that if all fails, organize a tryst. Thank you very much indeed.